34 minutes after the hour, America. Thanks to Evan Thomas for spending all that time with us. Terrific book, Being Nixon. Coming up next hour, Ted Cruz and Rick Santorum. In between, BuzzFeed Ben. Ben Smith is the editor of BuzzFeed. Tracked him down in Latvia this weekend. Then he fled to Paris to avoid me. But now he's back in the States. He's been extradited to appear on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hello, Ben.
Thanks for having me on, Hugh.
Well, you can't escape.
You got me confused.
Yeah, you can't escape the Hugh Hewitt Show. Ben, I got my Twitter feed after the marriage decision came down on Friday.
You really did nail me, though. I said I'm in Latvia, and you were like, well, they have phones there. And I couldn't argue with that.
But what was I couldn't figure it out first. I've subsequently done some research, and I see the quote that set it off. But what would you explain the controversy about BuzzFeed to people who don't know what it was about last week?
I don't really think I guess I don't really think there was much of a controversy, or at least I didn't see. There were I've been tweeting with three people today, Tim Carney and the guy named but I'm not sure, three or four people make a controversy. But I think we drafted and published a standards guide and an ethics guide several months ago. And I think we've been wrestling with something I'm sure you think about a lot, which is, although I think I probably come down somewhere a bit differently from you, which is, is it possible to what is the tradition that used to be called kind of objective journalism, mainstream media journalism, the tradition the New York Times and the Washington Post come out of, which is the tradition I come out of. How do you do that in a way that, that's honest with your readers? And I think, there's been for a long time been this debate, both on the right and on the left, saying, come on, you guys, stop lying. Don't conceal your opinions. We know you have real opinions. And at the same time, of course, everyone has a set of implicit opinions about, you don't have to say, Hugh, that you oppose racism and that you favor free speech. Those are obviously baked into your coverage just as much as they're baked into the New York Times' coverage.
Right. Just
as much as they're baked into our coverage. And marriage is this really singular issue, I think, right now. It's a thing that's moved incredibly fast, a thing that my staff and most of our readers, I think, feel is very clearly and strongly about, and where we felt like it was, and we do news, but we also do lots of entertainment and lifestyle content, and we felt like this was really a core value for us to support LGBT equality. That doesn't mean that, we have a view on the appropriate interpretation of the U.S. Constitution, but it certainly means that when our gay and lesbian friends and coworkers are able to get married, that's something we're going to celebrate.
Now, I understand that, but there is a quote attributed to you that Tim used today that says, "We firmly believe that for a number of issues, including civil rights, women's rights, anti-racism, and LGBT equality, there are not two sides." Now, I think I know that you don't mean silencing of the other side or shaming of the other side, as racists should be silenced and shamed. Do you?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, if you look at our coverage of particularly, I think the marriage issue is really singular. I think.
But I disagree with you on the marriage issue, right? You know that.
Yes, and I no, absolutely. And I think if you look at our coverage, we've had very rich, engaging profiles of people like Brian Brown, the head of the National Organization for Marriage, and I think have been really scrupulous in our coverage. And I think it's also valuable to readers in cases where your organization does really have these clear internal values around an issue, and where I do it. And a lot of reporters, myself included, do not have a strong set of views on a lot of very hotly contested issues. On what whether it's taxation or you ask a different day a week, I might give you a different answer. I'm very open to being wrong, and the reason I got into this business is because I kind of want to figure it out and report the facts. But there's a small set of issues where that's not the case, and we thought it was important to be transparent with our readers about that. It's at the same time covering it as fairly and respectfully and scrupulously as we can.
I think you've done the latter, but it's that phrase, and there are not two sides, and that's what I want to explore with you a little bit, because obviously,
this is the quote from our style. Just to be clear about it, and not to disavow it, but this is a quote from the style guide that was published in January. It's not something I said yesterday.
Okay. Oh, I did not know that, because it's quote.
The attribution is a little confusing.
Okay. Well,
that's fine.
Let's talk about what that means, because as a Roman Catholic and a mass attending Roman Catholic, I believe that human sexuality outside of a married man and woman is sinful and puts your soul in peril. That's a position held by billions of people, if you include also that position within Protestant denominations, et cetera. So there clearly are two sides. Are you saying?
Yeah, I think in the terms of our coverage, we have not been aggressive in covering the debate about what is going to happen to your soul.
I know, but there clearly are two sides. And so I'm curious, though, do you think that the people who hold the opposite opinion, who agree with the Chief Justice either constitutionally or with Orthodox Christianity, that they're racist and bigots?
No, of course not. I didn't know. I know. Maybe not. Of course. I mean, maybe of course not is too glib. No, I do not think that. Or not all of them. Among them are. Probably,
oh yes, agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
I mean, I think this is. I mean, this is just such a. It's a again. I mean, the speed with which this issue has moved means that I think most of us have people we're really close to and family members who we love who are on both sides of this issue.
Now hold that. I'll be right back with BuzzFeed Ben of BuzzFeed.com. Welcome back, Americans. Hugh Hewitt with BuzzFeed Ben. That's Ben Smith. He's the editor of BuzzFeed. We're talking about a non-controversy, actually. I think I understood it instantly that BuzzFeed wants to be known as being in favor of Justice Kennedy's majority opinion and in favor of marriage between two people.
I would say that we're in favor of. Honestly, I actually think that we're not. We that statement predated any Supreme Court ruling, and we're not in the business, and we certainly aren't. We don't have a view on what the appropriate reading of constitutional law is.
Okay, so here,
we just think that we just think our gay friends and coworkers ought to be able to marry.
Okay, and I get that.
But
now,
those are actually that's an important distinction.
Can your Christian friends and coworkers maintain tax-exempt colleges and universities even if they disagree with and refuse to employ same-sex married people?
That, like almost every other matter of hotly debated policy, is something that we cover aggressively but don't have any kind of institutional view on.
See, that to me is all that's why there's no controversy. I see right now the biggest issue among people of Christian faith is whether or not the IRS is going to attempt to do to Christian institutions what was done to racist or segregationist institutions, which is to take away their tax deductibility. The Bob Jones case of 1983. Are you familiar with that, Ben?
In passing, yeah. No, I think that's something we would obviously cover the hell out of case by case, right? I mean, but I think that's what we do. And I think, the reason, I think this question of every news organization has implicit in its, it has implicit views that are sometimes so obvious you don't need to state them, that you favor free speech, that you oppose racism. When does something cross from being something you cover into one of these sort of implicit views that's baked into your organization? Like, that's not a scientific question, but it's something like we felt like we wanted, that we could sort of feel that that's where we were, specifically on LGBT equality, and wanted to be transparent about it because it's a hotly contested issue that we cover.
But do you think LGBT equality equates to destroying the tax-exempt status of people that oppose same-sex marriage?
I think that is above my pay grade.
All right, because that's what happened in Bob Jones. I want to read to you from...
As a reporter.
All right, I think you're going to have to get smart on it pretty soon, because I'm sure some in the LGBT community are going to say absolutely yes. In Bob Jones in 1983, and Bob Jones at that time, they've subsequently changed quite a lot, banned interracial dating. And their tax exemption was taken away, and the Supreme Court did so by an 8-1 ruling upholding that. What's that?
Do you think it should have been?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I believe that racism is inherently and always evil. All right? I do not believe that sexual morality that says sexual intimacy ought to be limited to a man and a woman is immoral. In fact, I think it's God's law. And so I know that some races think they have God law, but these are difficult. Like, this isn't a precise science. And people like you and me were having this conversation on the radio 75 years ago about Jim Crow, and probably both, and people in our positions may someone, might have thought it was very nuanced. But Lincoln didn't, and natural law doesn't. And I think the natural law tradition is actually very, very clear on all of these things. But in the 1983, and this is where I come back.
I envy the clarity with which you see things.
Well, I just read a lot. I read my natural law, I read my Aquinas, and I read my Lincoln. But here's what Berger said, not in the same category, but still the Chief Justice, when he was talking about racial discrimination. There can no longer be any doubt that racial discrimination in education violates deeply and widely accepted views of elementary justice. And therefore, Bob Jones was going to lose their tax-exempt status unless they changed their policy. I don't think anyone should ever lose their tax-exempt status because of their religious beliefs about sexual morality, because those beliefs are inherently up for grabs, as opposed to the belief that a human being isn't a human being, right? Otherwise, you're going to have to say polygamy is acceptable, right, Ben?
Like many other things we cover, these are arguments that we cover and that we don't take positions on.
Do you guys take positions? This leads me to the harder stuff for you now. Do you guys take positions on Castro being evil?
And this isn't. We're not in the position to like. I think that this is often. I emailed you this before. And this is why I was initially reluctant to go on and was hiding out in Latvia, which is when people who, and I'm sort of a connoisseur of like really cringe-inducing interviews where the editor of the New York Times talks to somebody who really cares a lot about ideology and comes across sounding really squirrely because people who spend their time thinking about news are often kind of inarticulate on matters of ideology. It's not the thing they've spent a lot of time on. They're not that interested in it. And instrumentally, as a journalist, it gets in the way. And so, and this is what I always tell reporters, like, try not to use the word outrageous in a headline. Because if something's outrageous, the reader ought to read this thing and come away and say, hey, this is outrageous and shouldn't need to be told. We cover horrific things happening in the world. We do not add paragraphs saying, by the way, mass rape by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia was evil. That's not our job. We report on it.
I know, but when you report, for example, on Saudi Arabia, you're reporting on a state that refuses Christians to practice their faith. You're reporting on a state that beheads people. You're reporting on a state that embraces Sharia. Do you have an editorial judgment that is an evil state, or is that not within? Is that again above your pay grade?
That's not the business. The value that we add is the reporting, as I see it, and so that's what we try to do. So
can you articulate for me? And I think I get it, but can you articulate for me what is the difference between the need to announce on LGBT equality and the need not to announce on Sharia-governed states?
That's a really good question. The LGBT equality is an issue that our reporters was the central American political story of 2013. Is a central story in 2014 and in the first half of 2015 is a frontline issue that lots of our reporters are covering all the time, and also living, and it is also an issue that affects that affects a huge, lots and lots of people that I work with every day. We're celebrating the fact that they could marry the person they loved. And so it was an issue so I think on both of those fronts, and this is a matter of degree, not of kind.
So that's an issue, I think.
It's very, on both of those fronts, it's extremely close to home. And so something that we want to sit. But I don't think you're going to find, I can't give you a spreadsheet that weighs it, that, this is not a science.
But I know, but it's a good question because the issue of Islamist terrorism and its fountainhead is in front of us every day.
I think that, like, for instance, yes. Do I think that beheading people is evil? Yes. Is it valuable for me to add a paragraph to a story about beheading people that, by the way, I think it's evil? I don't understand that.
I'll come right back after the break and explain it to you. Don't go near BuzzFeed, Ben. One more segment, then Ted Cruz and Rick Santorum. You're not going to want to miss either of those interviews. I guarantee it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. 55 minutes after the hour. Ted Cruz is next. Ben Smith, I appreciate your being on. I have to ask you the question that BuzzFeed is posing at this hour, Ben.
Ted Cruz came to see us first, I have to say. It was,
okay, you scooped me.
He was here this morning.
But I suspect I got more news out of my interview than you did out of yours. Wait and see.
We got something great.
You didn't get as good as I did.
Not major, but a real insight into the man.
You take a look at my interview, which will be posted shortly.
So he does love to talk about the Constitution. You ask that guy a question, and he will read you the entire Constitution.
The objective Ben Smith will say, why can't we ask questions like Hugh Hewitt did after you read this? Here's the question, though, at the front of BuzzFeed right now. What would your 50 Shades of Grey name be, Ben Smith?
I haven't taken that quiz yet. I will.
You have time right now.
I will take it and tweet it at you. Have you figured out yours?
I have no idea what it means, so I'm afraid to say. But I luckily I didn't agree to be interviewed. I'm asking the question. So will you take it while we're waiting? Because here's my question: do you believe? Religion matters.
I have done radio interviews in the past where I was trying to multitask and do things on my phone while I did them, and that came out poorly. So How quickly
will you tweet out your answer to what would your 50 Shades of Grey name be?
I can guarantee I'll give it to you right after this.
All right, perfect. That's all I need to know. Now, the last people.
Have you seen the movie, by the way?
You don't believe in God. No, I don't take your crazy quizzes. You don't believe in God, right? You told me that in an earlier interview.
I did tell you that, and then I thought, that's really not any of his business.
Too late. You already told me that. So now you don't believe in God. Can you possibly cover well anyone like me who believes deeply in God and that the revealed word of his understanding. I mean, this is a journalism question. Can you ever get me, and do you have serious evangelicals on the staff of BuzzFeed with whom to engage in the conversation about going forward what these institutions are going to have happen to them as a result of the marriage decision? I'm not talking about LGBT.
I think there are three questions in there. One is that can journalists cover people who are different from them? And I think it's yes, and it requires a certain level of humility and empathy, and that good reporters are often covering people.
Good answer. Number two.
Views than them. We do have yes, but I also think that the newsroom diversity is it's really important, and having people of faith and particularly religious Christians in newsroom is important. Yes, and we do, and I think that's an important perspective.
And has anyone,
but also, I mean, I saw Ted Cruz complaining about the lack of evavangelicals on the Supreme Court.
Actually, it was Scalia. Scalia complained in a he said there are only there are six Catholics and 3 Jews, and he said we do not have on this court one evangelical Protestant. I put that aside.
Argument for affirmative action from Scalia.
It's an argument to be aware of elitism from Ivy League colleges. He also pointed out they had 9 Ivy League. Are you an Ivy League guy, Ben?
I am.
That's 8 there. You'd never get it. So the question is, can you ever understand the other side? 30 seconds, of course.
That's a question. Can you ever understand the other side?
On people between religious belief and those who don't. Could you ever understand my worldview?
I mean, I think good reporters are very good at least trying to understand the people they cover, and I think we have people who have all sorts of different beliefs here as well, and that's important.
All right, Bud, I'm looking for your tweet out on your 50 Shades thing. Ben Smith, always a pleasure. Thank you. I'll be right back. America, Ted Cruz ahead on The Hugh Hewitt Show.